Brenna knows best.
Hi friends, and welcome back to Brenna Knows Best. I'm your host, Brenna Berg. Hi, how are you guys? Happy Monday. Another pre-recorded episode. I'm in Montana right now, living my best life, and I hope that I'm putting out content and you guys know what I'm doing on Instagram, but y'all know the second I'm on vacay or doing something actually fun where most people that do content would take content, I don't. I'm like in the moment, which 100% I would rather be that way. I would rather be bad at my job and not do the content and live in the moment than the other way around, be so focused on content. But I hope that I'm like finding a happy medium. You guys know I've struggled with this for forever because my content has always been relationships. You guys know I started on TikTok, and this episode in specific like reminded me of why I started. And not that I need a reminder, but I love this shit. You guys, I am just so deeply fascinated by relationships and dating, and it's why I can talk about it all day long, every single day. And my recent obsession has been these John Deloney YouTube videos. I mentioned them last week. I've watched 1,000 more. You guys, I am not kidding you. So basically, John Deloney, he takes in calls and people, you know, spill their guts about their relationship. They're in sexless marriages, loveless, somebody cheated, they don't find their partner attractive anymore, or vice versa. And it's just like the wildest shit, but it's like real life. And I'm just so fascinated. I've been chatting Carter's ears off. I'm like, listen to this. And I go on and on and on because humans, like, I don't know. And it's always not always relationships, but like even watching shows, like I only really like documentaries. Like I want to see real people. I don't know. That's just me. However, today's episode, you guys, is from one of my favorite people ever, Kelly. Hi, love you. She sent me this inspo idea once I asked on Instagram a little while back. It's taken me a second to get to it. But basically, what she said was how to stay intentional in a relationship. And to me, I also saw that as like how to keep the spark, you know, which I don't necessarily believe in the spark, but we'll get into that. Okay, she said how to stay intentional in a relationship, date ideas, habits y'all have established, conversation starters you use, things you do unique to this relationship, stuff like that. I'm in my first relationship since I was 20, so navigating it is hard for me sometimes. It's so new to me. Okay, maybe I'll scratch saying your name just because obviously you didn't ask for that. However, I love this topic because also this is low-key one of my biggest fears in life is like being in a loveless relationship or being in a relationship where you just go through the day-to-day, which obviously there are going to be moments when you think about if I'm with Carter for the rest of my life, which I hope and pray. Not that I actually pray. Okay, Brenna, don't lie. But I hope and I think that I will be. Obviously, if I'm going to be with Carter for the rest of my life from now on, that is 60 years. We're talking about 70 years, okay? And I hope that we are, and I think that we will be together forever. I hope, fingers crossed. But obviously, we're going to go through so many things like kids and grief, and you don't even know the tragedy that can happen in your lifetime or just like illness, you know? And number one, I think that is what's so special about being with somebody. Like I truly love Carter more today than I did in the beginning, which don't get me wrong, those like beginning dating stages is so fun and you're just so enamored by the other person. And like we all know those first like date feels is so giddy and like the spark, quote unquote, okay, because I don't even really know what the spark is, but like that feeling is incredible. But truly knowing somebody and like building a life together and getting deep with somebody is like, in my opinion, true love. But back to what I was saying, okay, this is truly one of my biggest fears because me personally, I only ever saw loveless marriages growing up, and I would say sexless. I don't know for sure because obviously I wasn't asking the adults around me if they were having sex, but like obviously I come from divorced parents. My mom got remarried. That was a shitty ass marriage. My dad now was in a happy and healthy relationship, but that didn't start until I was like essentially late into high school. Okay, a lot of my aunts and uncles, pretty much most of them, like they just coexist, and I'm just like, oh, know. It kills me. And I've told you guys before that once I moved to Dallas and I met the nanny fam, and then I met some other people that are like truly so happy and they've been together 20 plus years. I've learned things from them. Carter, for example, he doesn't know divorce. His parents are still together. His grandparents, both sets are still together. And that has honestly opened my eyes. And he comes from such a healthy place and I come from such an unhealthy place. But I think together then we have tools to know what we do and don't want in both of them. To know what we do and what we don't want. In my opinion, all of the things that I want in a relationship is because I never saw them in the relationships that I experienced as a child. When I think, sorry, about my mother and her husband at the time, obviously he has passed, RIP. Their relationship, I'm there are so many things that I saw. I'm I can't have that happen to me. There is so much more to life. And I've always said, you can always be single. My dad was a single father for most of his life. And that man is one of the happiest people I know. And he didn't need a partner. You know what I mean? So anywho, let's get into it. But I do talk to Carter about this all the time, especially one of my biggest fears is when we have kids, your attention goes all to them. And number one, I'm not going to have any of my own individual time, but I'm I just want to know for a fact that we're going to be good, because I especially believe that your relationship is so important when kids are involved. So often we also see people just totally forget about their spouse and go all in on the kid or children, however many you have, which makes sense. And again, I'm talking from a place where I obviously don't have children and have never experienced that. So easier said than done. Totally. Of course it's probably going to happen, but that's why I'm so cognizant of it now, because I'm we need to make extra sure, because it is so easy in life to go about your day and focus on this or that and forget your partner because they've been a constant and you know them and they love you. And it's the first thing to go to the side when it is literally, I think, the most important thing in your life. I think your partner, you are literally going to be with them until you die. You're raising those kids together. You're going to get through grief together. Your partner is literally your saving grace, in all of these moments. And they're so quickly put to the side, in my opinion. Again, this is my experience from what I've seen. So I just don't want that to happen for myself. Let's get into how to be intentional, how to keep the spark. Okay. And the first thing I want to say before I get into the tips is your partner also wanting the same things that you are? Because what I'm about to tell you and my tips and tricks for keeping the spark alive and, making sure you're communicating and doing all of these things. If your partner is not in that same mindset, if your partner doesn't believe in marriage or being together forever, or they're just not really that interested in y'all's relationship, and you know what I'm talking about. There are people that just get into relationships because they just get into relationships. There's not really love there. They already just coexist. Is your partner somebody who is also going to reciprocate the energy and care about y'all's relationship? And I think you just have to really break down that person and their qualities. I don't care if that person is the life of the party. I don't care if you and your partner have the same music interests. When we're younger and at certain points in our life, we focus on the completely wrong things in relationship. And actually, I just read a book and it kind of got brought to my attention while I was reading. This girl was talking about how when they first started dating, she loved that her husband was the life of the party, right? When they were first dating, it was so fun to go out. And she's but now we have 3 kids and that shit just doesn't matter. So really breaking down the qualities that you need in a partner and that are actually important. Having somebody that's as in that relationship as you are and that cares about marriage and that cares about y'all's relationship, and a man who wants to be married, actually, if that's what you want. If you don't want that, obviously, but I think most of you do. And if you're in a relationship, I feel typically that's the goal. So I think number one, taking a good hard look and being honest with yourself and saying, is this the right person? You can try and keep the spark alive all you want, but if your partner doesn't give a tit about y'all's relationship or marriage or progressing the relationship and making sure it's constantly happy and healthy, then none of the shit I'm about to tell you is going to matter. Does that make sense? And with that, I also want to say that the spark is not real. And imagining that you're going to have those same feelings that you did in the first few weeks and months of your relationship years in, I think is not a good mindset to have. Can you want like a deep, real, healthy love? Of course. And like that is a million times better than the spark. Like I was saying, the spark in quotations. Jay Shetty talks about this a lot, but when we were kids, we grow up watching Disney fairy tales and everybody talks about the happy ever after. And in movies, they make it seem sometimes like everything's so happy-go-lucky all the time and people are just in love all of the time. And I'm going to stare you right in the face and say, obviously, that's not real, okay? And that is why it's extra important to nail down these things prior to kids, to being with somebody years and years and years, because life is going to be mundane and it's also going to be shitty as hell at times, okay? That's just the reality of it. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's going to be roses and fairy tales all the time. That's not real, but it's also not normal to be in a loveless marriage your entire life, to just coexist with somebody. Like a lot of people live that life. I saw it all the time growing up in North Dakota, but that doesn't have to be your reality. I just want to set realistic expectations. And I think most people know that, but there is a happy medium. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. Number one, the most important thing ever in a relationship period, but also to be intentional, is to communicate. I cannot tell you, having a lack of communication is the biggest relationship killer of all time, because the more days you go by without speaking about things like, yeah, you might get home and do the whole, how are you doing? How was your day? Surface level bullshit conversations. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not communicating. I'm talking about the nitty gritty. Okay. Shit that you've been through in your life, your trauma, financials, stress, relationships, family shit. Like I'm talking about real life shit you need to be talking about with your partner all the time. Okay. And if there are certain areas that you can't talk about with your partner, you need to work on that right now, because that is the person. If you can't even talk to your partner about your feelings, if he gets mad at you, if he gives you the silent treatment, if he just doesn't want to talk about that, how are you going to have parenting conversations in 4 years when you have children? How are you going to talk about your job and how you hate it, but you want to make sure that your guys' financials are okay so you can quit the job? But if you can't even talk about the simple little things, like I think about it as like these two entities, like here's you on one side, here's your partner, and you guys are connected, right? But the less you guys speak, you guys just grow farther and farther apart, because there are so many things that are being left unsaid. And the more you go without talking about, you can not talk about finances, but then that's going to trickle into your conversations about sex. Does that make sense? Like if you have a hard time talking about one thing, that is going to then linger into other areas, and you are just growing further and further and further apart. Does that make sense? And I'm talking about every single day having a somewhat, it doesn't need to be a deep conversation, because there's not constantly things going on that need a conversation. But I'm talking about no distractions, okay? Phones down, really listening, just being engaging with your partner, and not just like the bullshit, how was your day, okay? I think a lot of people, okay, you have your job, you're 9 to 5, both of you, okay? You wake up, you get ready, you don't even speak in the morning because you're just doing your thing. You go to work, you get home. How was your day? Okay. You eat, you go to bed, repeat. There's like nothing of substance. You guys aren't speaking, you guys aren't connecting, and that is going to kill your relationship. So first things first, communication, just about the big things, the little things, like, and really listen to your partner, okay? And I hope they're also listening to you, because again, like, let's face it, most of our life is going to be this mundane thing. It's you go to work, you come home, like, of course, that's everybody's reality. So any way that you can break that up and connect with your partner on the day-to-day, something that is so crucial for me and Carter is when we get to go on our walks together. Like that is truly uninterrupted time. We don't bring our phones. We go on a walk. Sometimes it's silent the whole time, and sometimes we just gab away. Most times it's like obviously just conversation about this, that, and the other things we see, things going on in our life. Also, you guys know I'm a walkaholic, and I ended up inspiring Nanny Mom to go on walks. Well, shortly after she started, her and her husband, okay, nanny, mom and dad, would go on morning walks at 5 a.m. They would walk to the coffee shop and come back. And they both told me, they're like, this has been a game changer for our relationship. And these people have been together almost 20 years, okay? But they also are very busy. They're both highly successful individuals in very high up jobs, okay? With 2 kids, they run around. Like, you get home, you have dinner as a family. The only time they're connecting is when they're getting into bed at 9 p.m. and they're exhausted, but they found that time in the morning. And this is their time when they got to talk about the children and their family and like what the fuck ever. And they said it's literally changed their relationship. And of course, the walking isn't for everybody. And I think about past partners, and I always wanted to do that, but they didn't, which again is fine. But I think finding these little moments, I'm just saying a walk in specific. When Carter starts working, obviously we won't be able to do the morning walks. We're going to go to the gym in the morning, but I think we'll find some time in the evening after dinner or before dinner to go. And like, that is just such a good moment of connection. Or that can be playing a game quick at night, playing a little game of Yahtzee. I'm going to talk about date nights and trying new things, but really at the end of the day, the day-to-day stuff is what you're going to see the most. Obviously that time together is going to far outweigh your date nights and things. So doing small things often, which I'm going to talk about the Gottman Institute, Dr. John and Julie Gottman, but they really emphasize doing small things often. And it's like these little moments of connection, which I think is so important. After communication, I think the next most important thing is sex. You guys, sex is crucial to a relationship, whether you want to believe it or not. And this is one thing that really goes, again, to the wayside. Am I saying that correctly? Wayside, I think. If I'm not, you guys will understand what I'm saying. But in our lives, especially for women, when we get stressed and when we've had a long day, it's the last thing on our brain, typically. I think for most women, men can have sex any goddamn day of the week. Of course, are there men that go through low libido? Totally. Everybody's different. But sex with your partner, whether you are in the mood or not, because there are going to be plenty of times where your partner is and you aren't, but I would say, okay, and I feel like once you start getting intimate with them, touching and kissing, like you'll get there. And of course, always say no when you don't want to have sex. But if you're constantly pushing off your partner, number one, they're probably going to think that you're not attracted to them, which is going to create a fuck ton of issues. I'm going to mention John Deloney a million times because I've been watching these videos. There were a ton of people calling in about not having sex with their partner. There was one woman who said she was married 12 years. They had had sex 5 times. Okay. And obviously that is a crazy thing. Like, that is an outlier, but this shit happens. And he asked, like, is this because you don't want to, or like, what was the situation? And she was like, back in the day, yeah, I used to push him off. And he's like, obviously you can't take that back now, but you need to find a way, whether it's scheduling it in your calendars. Okay. So often there are times where I'm like, can we have sex? Like, I'm not even naked. It's not like this hot, sexy thing where we're, get caught up in the moment. I literally look at Carter. He's like sitting on the couch. I'm like, let's go have sex right now. We go into the bedroom, we take off our clothes, but immediately after I feel so connected to him. It's not always this hot and steamy and sexy thing. And that's why I think the scheduling of sex, people think that's so weird, but especially again, when you have kids and things involved, you just need to find a way to make it happen, because physical intimacy and emotional intimacy go hand in hand. And of course, I've been with wrong partners in the past, obviously previous boyfriends. There were times with them I could have gone the rest of my life without having sex with them. That's not fucking normal, because you should be attracted to your partner and feeling emotionally connected to them. And I'm just saying, like, sex is so important. It shouldn't obviously be make or break, but I think on the list of things that are important, it is very high, top 3 on the list. Okay. And vice versa. Like, think about if you guys weren't having sex and then that starts trickling into your, like, is he not attracted to me anymore? Like, it can easily fester into something like that. And then that trickles into other aspects of your life. You're feeling insecure and then you guys don't talk about it. Okay, I'm going to bring back communication a million times. Then you're sitting here, you guys haven't had sex in weeks, but if you don't talk about things, you don't bring it up because you're scared. And again, here's this space in between you two just growing and growing and growing apart. And then one day you turn around and you haven't had sex in a year and you guys don't talk about anything. And like, what happened to your relationship. So I just think making it a priority, and of course there's going to be slumps, and I get it, having a low libido, that is so real, but also in those moments then talking to your partner, like making sure that he knows, like, it has nothing to do with you. I'm still attracted to you. Okay. I'm just going through this. Get a therapist. Okay. Go talk to your OBGYN, because also, like, that's, we have expectations for our partners. And I think having sex is one of them. It goes both ways. So if there's an issue of some sort, then you guys need to work through that. But at the very least, I think having sex once a week, and that still is like far too little, in my opinion. Obviously, again, if I'm talking to mothers, okay, people who have children, I get it. There will be moments where that's not happening. But I think number one, having a goal for yourself and talking to your partner about that. Like, say, hey, realistically, like right now, okay, we haven't had sex in a month. Like, let's just try to do once a week. Figure that out together, but it's so important, and make it a priority. Okay. The quickest way you're going to lose the spark and get comfortable in your relationship is when you stop having sex. You guys are literally roommates. Like, if you guys just come home at the end of the day, you don't have sex, you sleep in the same bed, you just wake up, you never talk. Like, what is that? You guys are roommates. Okay. So if you really want to keep the spark alive and be intentional, being intimate is so important. And that leads me into the next thing. There are so many different kinds of intimacy. And also with sex, making sure that you're touching your partner. I've been cognizant of this too, because I'm not necessarily a touch person. I definitely am way more with Carter. Like, in past relationships, don't fucking touch me. Like, and that's not normal, I don't think. And figuring out yourself, like, what that is. But even when Carter and I, let's say we're on the couch and he's watching a show and I'm reading, like, there were a few times where I noticed we were on opposite ends of the couch, but even like putting my hand on his foot, okay, like if he's laying the long way and I'm over here, like touching his foot, or then leaning on his lap, even if it's not super comfortable and I'm reading and I'm having to tilt my head, I think touching your partner, even the slightest thing, holding hands, again, the hand on the goddamn foot, it makes a difference, okay? Because again, if you're never touching, you go to bed, you don't kiss goodnight, like these things in the moment is fine. Like, that doesn't mean you guys are doomed, but it becomes a habit. And then you look back in a year and you haven't touched your partner in forever. Like, you have to be so intentional with yourself and then also with your partner. And again, if you feel like it's a problem on their end, don't attack them. But if you're constantly communicating about these things, it won't be an issue. Just constantly be checking in. Like, hey, have we touched enough this week? Have we had sex enough this week? Like, I think evaluating all of the time is so good. And also, we are changing and evolving as human beings all the time. Like, you are a different person now than you were a year ago. And on the day-to-day, you don't see the change happening, but it's happening. So I think when you have more frequent check-ins with your partner, you can stay on top of that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's talk about other forms of intimacy and also with sex. Oh my gosh, I need to have like a whole episode on sex, because like, I don't think men often realize that we need to feel emotionally connected to like be turned on. Like, we need the compliments and like the foreplay and like that sort of thing prior, which can be just like an intimate hug, or like it can be whatever that is for you, but communicating that with your partner. Communicate. Okay. Anyways, other forms of intimacy. Number one, emotional intimacy. This is having hard conversations, being vulnerable. Okay. Being able to connect on a deep level. I cannot stress enough, your partner is the person you should be the closest with, closer than you are with your mom, than your sister, which obviously I have really weird relationships with my mom and I don't have a sister, but like truly I believe that your partner should be your go-to person. So being emotionally intimate is important. Intellectual intimacy, and this can go a lot of different ways, and this is my favorite part of Carter, and I tell him this all the time. Carter is, again, the smartest man I've ever met. He teaches me so much about so many different things. Like, I learned something new every single day from this man, and that to me is so hot. But also intellectual intimacy can be learning more about one another. And I think I'll talk about this a little bit. Trying new things with your partner, whether that's new food, whether that's taking a cooking class or a dancing class, like that will always make you guys grow deeper and deeper together. Because again, if you just go through the day to day, amazing, but like you're not really growing anymore, there comes to a point where, okay, you know everything about this person, you know their tics, you know the way they operate their life, you know the way they do chores, yada, yada, yada. But an intellectual intimacy, and again, we're always changing. You can take a cooking class one day and then take that same class in a year and it'll go differently and you'll learn different things because again, we're constantly changing and evolving. So that's another form of intimacy. Spiritual intimacy. Okay, if you're religious people, or even if you're not religious, but you're spiritual, you believe in the universe, this just goes with morals and beliefs and life after death and that sort of thing. Like these are all things you should be talking about with your partner. And again, for the strength and healthiness of your relationship. Like I was saying, I love Carter so much more now than I ever have in the past because every single day I learn more about him and we grow deeper in these. And that level of like bond and knowing somebody is truly just the best. This one's a little different, but financial intimacy, knowing your partner's relationship with finances, how you guys want to spend your money, how you do currently spend your money, knowing somebody in a financial sense is really scary. And if you are planning on being with this person, I imagine you guys would combine your finances to some extent. That's what I believe in. So you have to know this about your partner anyways before getting married because it's important. And you probably don't know anybody else that deeply, like even your parents, even your best friend. People don't talk about money and it's going to be make or break in your relationship. So being intimate on that level is important. Okay, now let's get into kind of like the nitty gritty. I've talked about communication and being intimate with one another. Weekly date nights, okay? You guys need to be having a weekly date night and it doesn't need to be out. I get it. If you're broke as hell right now, have a game night, okay? Me and Carter do this all the time. When he was studying for finals and studying for the bar exam, we were not going out every week also because of money, and I get that. The important thing about a date night is getting to sit across from your partner and talk and laugh and be playful and either try something new or play a game. Like all of these interactions that kind of switch up the day-to-day norm, I think is so important. Me and Carter have also already talked about once he starts working, we will 100% go on an outing date night every single week. And we're going to be foodie people. Carter's way more of a foodie than I am, but I do enjoy trying new food. So he's super excited to every Friday or Saturday night. That's our date night. And I think, again, once kids come into the picture, I imagine it's so hard to get a babysitter, right? To just be away from your baby. But it's so important for you too to have that time to connect, because as I'm telling you, to have these conversations on the day to day, like I'm sure Carter and I will have weeks where we fall into the mundane, but having that weekly date night will break that up and allow us to sit across from each other and have a few hours to unpack the week or talk about a current thing or whatever that is. But actually the other day, Carter was telling me, and I've seen this before, and you know me, I talk to him about relationships 24/7, but he was like, babe, I saw this thing where they said a weekly date night, bi-monthly, so like every 2 months, a weekend trip away, and then every single year, or maybe it was every 6 months, I'm not sure exactly, a week trip, probably once a year, because obviously when he starts working, he was like, I really want to implement that because I think that would be so important. And here's another thing with date nights and then trips. Number one, having something to look forward to in a relationship, a trip together, okay, or even that every Friday night date night is so nice and so crucial. If you never have anything to look forward to, that's fine. And there's, something beautiful about enjoying the day to day, but I think it's super helpful in a relationship. It's something to talk about. It's something to plan for. Like we're going to Hawaii for Thanksgiving and we talk about it all the time, and we're going to Montana next week. We've been talking about it nonstop and and we're so excited. And then also we went on our road trip in December. We have so many memories, and with these trips and even the weekly date nights, like you're always doing something new together, and that grows your bond and strengthens your relationship. So not only like you're creating memories in the moment, but it's also like beneficial to look forward to and to have in the past, if that makes sense. Next up, and this is something I do all of the time, compliment your partner. Okay, I know it's easy to just fall into the whatever and getting used to that person, but obviously, if you're with them, you find them attractive. I tell Carter every single day, I'm like, you are the hottest man I've ever seen in my whole entire life. And also, this is unprovoked. Like, this isn't even a thought in my head. When he's in the kitchen, there's something about the lights when he has a tank top on. His arms are ginormous. And every single time I look at him, like, I literally cannot keep it in. He's probably so annoyed because I say it like every day. When I look over, I'm like, babe, your arms are huge. And every single time he smirks. And like, of course, I want him to feel good, but like that's not even, I'm just like making an observation. But every single day, I would say complimenting your partner or showing your appreciation somehow, be like, thank you for making dinner, or thank you for doing that thing for me. That is also so important. Something that I haven't been doing, but that I want to start doing, okay, is impressing Carter. And with that, I mean like looking good, okay? Because homegirl has gotten comfortable. And of course, does Carter give a tit? No. And does Carter also think I'm still the hottest girl alive, even when I never put on makeup and I look like a slob? Yes, it has nothing to do with him. But I saw something on social media the other day and it was so true. Like when Carter and I go on date night, yeah, I get dressed up and I put on makeup, but that's because I'm like going out into the public. Like, why would I not do that same thing for my partner? And of course, it doesn't need to be every day. And people take this to like the feminist extreme, but I do think there is something about also looking good and feeling good. Like, homegirl, get it together, put a little makeup on your face, but also like trying to impress your partner. And I know it can sound so dumb. Like, they know you ins and outs. They've, Carter has popped my pimples. Like, Carter has seen me on the toilet. Of course, he knows like the worst parts of me. And it's not trying to fool him or trick him, but just to, again, like when I do have makeup on, like one time I remember picking him up from class and he was like, oh my gosh, like you look so good. And it wasn't like an insult by any means, but he was right. Like, I did look good. I did my makeup and having a cute little outfit on, which is something I want to do for myself because I do really want to step up my fashion game. I've said that for forever, but I think remembering to impress your partner is important. And that's something that I have not done, but I'm going to try and do. So I want you guys to keep me accountable. Okay. Oh, something that you would not think about in keeping the spark alive in your relationship, but that I think is so crucial, is having separate friends, letting your boyfriend go out and hang out with the guys or whatever that looks like. My boyfriend goes and hangs out with his friend and they go to the shooting range or they just hang over at their apartment. Time away from your partner also, number one, makes you realize like how much you love that person, but it's so healthy and it's so good. Or if it's like a hobby, or an interest, like having your own individual thing, because odds are if you're with your partner for a long time, you probably live together, okay? And when you spend that much time together, you need to have time apart and to have different human interactions. Of course, you guys know I don't believe in like opposite sex friendships, but for them to go hang out with their guy friends and you to have your girlfriends, and also to like chit chat, and also to like have those girlfriend conversations. Like when me and my best friend Natalie get together, we talk about, what's been going on. And it's just such a different relationship, which is important for yourself in general, but I think it's important for your relationship as well. So don't forget to like make a priority of your friends and also for your partner. Like, you can't be their entire source of happiness and just like well-being. It's really important for them to have their own friendships and things as well. Another thing that me and Cutie Carter do is, I would say once a month, and honestly, we should do it more because I love when we do it. We pull out our Let's Get Deep cards, okay, and we ask questions. And Let's Get Deep is the game we played at our picnic, but there are some questions that are like romantic and like, when did you know you love me? Which, who doesn't love asking their partner, like, when did you fall in love with me? But there's also like icebreaker ones, which it's fun to talk about. Like, yeah, I'm sure you and your partner have talked about everything under the sun, but I feel like even when me and Carter talk about similar things, I always pick up on different details about him, or like a memory of him as a child. Like, he views things differently. So then you hear a different side of it. And again, this goes back to just communication and getting to know one another on a deeper level. But as far as conversation starters, like, which again seems silly when you've been with somebody for a long time, but there are so many things you don't know about your partner or different things that you interpret a certain way. So I highly recommend getting some sort of set of cards or even just Googling online. Like there are often times when Carter and I are on our date night and we'll pull out our phones, which obviously I don't encourage like being on your phones, but we'll pull them out to like pull up questions, and then we'll ask questions and that'll get us into conversation. And it's so fun and so cute, and another way to just get deep with your boyfriend. And then lastly, sort of, I have a few more things to say after this. Another way to keep the spark alive in your relationship, and you guys would know what I'm going to say, except you're probably like, no, bitch, I have no idea what you're going to say. But once I say it, you're going to be like, oh, this dumb bitch. Working on yourself, working on your mental, physical, emotional health is always going to also help keep the spark alive in your relationship. I think if you stop taking care of yourself and you're not working out and you're not eating right, number one, that's going to make you feel like shit. And then that trickles into your relationship. You start to get insecure. You start thinking maybe your partner feels a certain way about like it, fucks with yourself. And then that ends up pouring out or spilling out onto your partner. So one of the best things you can do for your partner is be the best you. And I'm not going to get any further into that because you guys have heard this little rant again and again and again. However, I want to talk about this little thing that I saw. So before I was going to sit down and do this episode, I wanted to Google little things, spark some ideas. But Dr. John and Julie Gottman, okay, they have the Gottman Institute. They have a million books, maybe not a million, but a lot of books. They're like relationship experts. I'm sure you've heard of them if you like this sort of thing. But they believe in this sort of theory, or they have this little roadmap of 6 hours a week to better your relationship. Okay. And in this little thing, I'm going to break down the minutes and what they say. And of course, like it's a little bit cheeseball. However, I think it's very true. And I think these people have the most data on relationships. Like if you've ever heard any statistic about relationships, divorces, it probably came from the Gottmans, but I think you can kind of tweak it in your own ways. I'm just going to read through this. Okay. And I'll post this on my story when I post this episode so you can see it. But okay. So the 6 hours to a better relationship: partings. Happy couples make an effort to learn one thing that is happening in their partner's life that day before saying goodbye in the morning. The goal is to ask questions and learn something about the exciting or not so exciting things about your partner's day. It says 10 minutes per week, 2 minutes a day, 5 days a week, right? So like right before you're leaving, just a quick little something. Okay. Reunions. When you see your partner again at the end of the day, share a hug and a kiss that lasts at least 6 seconds. The 6-second kiss is a ritual of connection that is worth coming home to. Afterwards, have a stress-reducing conversation for at least 20 minutes. So it says that's an hour and 40 minutes per week, 20 minutes a day of the 5 days of the week. Okay. Amazing. Again, it's all about connection, communicating. Okay, next, appreciation and admiration. Use an admiration journal to record something small you notice and connect it to a trait you admire about your partner. This primes your mind to see the positive traits of your partner instead of focusing on the negative, and also makes your partner feel valued. Okay, 35 minutes per week, 5 minutes a day, 7 days a week. Love that. Okay, affection. Make sure to embrace each other before falling asleep. In parentheses, cuddling or a goodnight kiss. Think of these moments of affection as a way to let go of the minor stressors that have built up over the week. Again, 35 minutes per week. That's 5 minutes a day, 7 days a week. It's so important. Just all of these little things you can do. Like 6 hours of the week is nothing. And it's broken up, into these smaller little things. Okay, then they have date night. During your date, ask open-ended questions and focus on turning towards each other. This important we time is a relaxing and romantic way to stay connected to each other. 2 hours once a week. Okay. And then lastly, it says State of the Union meeting. Spending just 1 hour per week discussing areas of concern within the relationship gives couples the freedom to express their fears and concerns in a way that makes them feel heard and loved instead of feeling neglected. 1 hour a week. boom. Like truly, if you were to follow one certain little thing from the day to day, of course, it doesn't need to be exactly, but I think all of those things are so important. Every single night when we go to bed, I make sure to roll over and kiss Carter. And I noticed recently Carter has been going to bed quicker because he was studying for the bar or before the bar exam and I was still reading and he wasn't in the habit of doing it. And I was like, I need a kiss. And it seems so dumb. And there are moments I'm like, it doesn't matter. But I'm like, no, it's just like these small little moments of connection, which I think is so important. Okay. And that kind of like wraps up what I was saying. And of course, at the end of the day, not all of these things are going to work for you. And you can kind of substitute your own things and who you are and your personality, but you know yourself best. But I will say the fact that you asked this question, or anybody that's thinking this and like is curious about how to keep the spark alive and be intentional, I think that just recognizing it in and of itself is so good and so important because you're on top of it that way. Like if you're just two people aimlessly coexisting and nobody's worried about it, like you are going to head into dangerous territory. But I think the fact that even if it's not all perfect, even if there are weeks in a row where you don't have sex or you don't connect or you're not communicating, like you can always decide that very next day that you want to be better and you can communicate more and then get to the nitty gritty. And that's why the communication is so, so important. That way, when things do arise, you know, whatever the thing is, financials, work stressor, not having sex, as long as you're communicating, it's way easier than to bring up those things and then get on the same page and figure out a plan to get back to you guys and what works for you. And it's constantly going to be changing. You know, you switch a job, let's say you work nights, or so many variations of things can happen in your life. But at the end of the day, coming back to your partner and talking and figuring it out together is how you're going to stay in a healthy and happy relationship and how you're going to grow together. That is just my 2 cents. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. I'm sure we'll have this conversation again. And this is why I'm also so happy to be documenting all of this, because Carter and I's life is going to look so different even a year from today. We're going to have more money. Obviously, he's going to be working. We're going to be potentially moving at that time. You know, one of us could be doing a different job. Like things are constantly changing. And also my opinions and thoughts on things are changing. So I'm sure we'll continue to have these conversations and I can let you guys know like what we're doing now to keep things like fun and alive and what we've tried and what worked and what didn't work. And that is why I'm so glad that you guys are here. And thank you guys for listening. As always, I will see you next week. I hope you have the best week. Okay, that's all I have. Bye, guys.